Hello, everyone. Welcome to our webinar today, hosted by Newton, titled, When Does Healthy Eating Become Unhealthy? We're going to give a couple minutes here as people enter into the webinar, and we'll be getting started right away.
Great to see so many familiar faces, or names, I guess.
All right. So what do you think, Amanda? Are we ready to jump in?
Let's do it.
Love it. Okay. All right. Welcome again, everybody, to our webinar today titled, When Does Healthy Eating Become Unhealthy? My name is Tressa, and with me I have Amanda. Before we get into introductions, we would like to acknowledge that we're tuning in from Winnipeg, Manitoba, which is located on the original lands of the Anishinaabe, Cree, Oji-Cree, Dakota, and Dene peoples, and on the homeland of the Métis Nation. We would also like to just bring some attention to where Winnipeg sources their water from as well, which is Shoal Lake, which is located just near the Manitoba-Ontario border. The Shoal Lake 40 First Nation community has and was in a drinking water advisory since 1997, alongside many other First Nations communities within Canada. So while Winnipeg has been sourcing water from Shoal Lake for over 100 years, it took until recently, being September of 2021, so just this past September, for the community of Shoal Lake to now be able to drink from their taps. So we just want to take a quick moment here to acknowledge that and that it's time to end drinking water advisories within First Nation communities across Canada. So some housekeeping before we jump in. Amanda is going to graciously, if she already hasn't, pasted the handouts in the chat box, and you can feel free to download these to support this webinar for today. Please ensure your microphone is muted to reduce background noise. We're going to be saving all the questions at the end, and you can feel free to type those in the chat box. The recording of this webinar will be available shortly. And throughout the webinar, we have some poll questions for you as well. So who am I? My name is Tressa Beaulieu. I am an able-bodied Métis woman who is white presenting. I have Oji-Cree ancestral ties to Lac St. Anne area, now known as Lake Nipigon. I moved from Thunder Bay to Winnipeg to become a dietitian, where I went to the University of Manitoba to complete nutritional sciences degree and a minor in Indigenous studies. And now I work part-time with Newton. And I get to work with Amanda Hamill. So I'll let Amanda take it away here.
Thanks so much, Tressa. And thanks for that. My name is Amanda Hamill, and I am a multi-privileged person. I identify as a white settler. I'm able-bodied. My pronouns are she, her, and I'm also food secure, which I think, these privilege kind of set the stage for what we'll be chatting about today. I've been a dietitian since 2013, and I'm currently working with lovely Tressa and our fellow team members here with Newton as a nutrition educator. So for all of you, I see some dietitians in the room, but for those of you who aren't a dietitian, sometimes dietitians get a bad rep for being the food police, but I can assure you that our team here at Newton, at least, and I'm sure many other dietitians, we are not the food police. We really love food. We believe that it brings people together, during these tough times. We also believe that all foods can fit. And as dietitians, we love busting myths and fads around food, kind of the fake news out there. And just like nurses and doctors, we are regulated health professionals. So we go through a lot of training to get to where we are today. So now that you've learned a little bit about us, we'd like to know who's in the room today. So we have a little poll here I'm going to share with you. Who do we have in the room today? So I'm going to launch this poll and feel free to answer. Hopefully we've created enough categories for everybody. Give a couple more seconds for that. Excellent. All right, I'm going to end that poll. And as you can see, we have lots of fellow healthcare professionals in the room, some teachers, early childhood educators, as well as some caregivers and students. So welcome, everybody. We're so happy to have you here today. So Newton, kind of a funny word. Who are we? Newton stands for nutrition plus education. That's kind of how we melded the two words together. And we are graciously funded by the Dairy Farmers of Canada, which is how we can provide free resources to people like you. And our main goal as dietitians here on the Newton team is to really help Manitoba educators to help their students and kids feel more comfortable around food and eating. So to build more positive relationships with food and eating. And we do encourage this through getting hands-on with food. So exploring a variety of foods and discovering the joys of food. So in the really short time that we have together today, we're going to explore a number of really big nuanced topics. And Tress and I were just chatting that this topic is so big, it could probably be a 2-hour, maybe a full day webinar, but we're condensing it into one hour here. So we'll discuss what is healthy eating. We'll also chat about when does healthy eating take a turn for the negative, aka diet culture, how to spot diet culture and protect not only your mental health, but maybe the kids in your lives as well. And how can we change the way that we talk about food, bodies, and movement so that we can support more positive relationships with food and body for both ourselves and also the kids that we might work with. And just like dietitians, you don't have to be the food police either. So let's dive into a rather nuanced question. What is healthy eating anyways? And I think it would be almost too easy of me to throw up the food guide and say, here you go, this is how you eat healthy. I think many of us in the room probably know that it's a lot bigger than that. So we'll kind of dive into what this word actually means. But I think you can advance to the next slide here. I think before we can dive into that question, it takes a little bit of stepping back and looking at your own relationship with food. And a lot of this has to do with the language that we use, both internally and externally with the people around us. So we're going to throw up a series of questions here. These are taken from fellow anti-diet dietitian Christy Harrison. And please know that these questions are not meant or intended to diagnose or treat any health condition, nor are they a substitute for any medical advice. So the purpose of these questions is just to get you thinking about the type of language that you might use about food and body. So I'm going to pull up the questions here. Your answers are anonymous, so we cannot see who's answering what. So let me launch this one here. Can we see them, Tressa?
Yeah, you're all good. Are you also able to copy and paste while people are answering that, the links to the handouts again? It seems Nanette's having a hard time viewing the links.
You bet.
Thank you.
So the first question here is, if I eat certain foods or eat more than I think I should, I feel the need to work it off through exercise. I don't know if people can actually see that. Relaunch poll. Let's do that. There we go. So the first question is up there, and while we take a look at that question number 1, I'm going to launch the handouts in the chat here. There we go. Now we're working. All right. The second question I can see some of you have already answered is, I tell myself that I should or shouldn't eat certain foods. Some of you are speedy here. The third question that we have here is, I feel like a failure when I don't eat the way I think I should. The fourth question is, I base my eating decisions on my weight. If I've gained weight, I eat less or follow a diet more strictly. There's kind of a mixed bag of answers so far. The fifth question is, I try to practice, in quotes, clean eating, however you might describe that. And the last question here is, I fight against my desires for certain foods and I use willpower to stop myself from eating them. So I'll give about a minute or so to answer those questions, but I can see we're getting some answers here. Okay, thank you for that. And here are the results. So for each question, there was kind of, like I said, a mixed bag of answers all over the map. And keep that in your back pocket as we go through the rest of this webinar, because we will circle back to some of those questions. So thank you for that. All right, so back to that question, what is healthy eating anyways? Like I said, it's a really kind of nuanced term. And the truth is that healthy eating means different things to different people. It really is this very individual concept. And the reason why we have a picture of a baby here is because all of us, we were all born with this innate ability to listen to our bodies. So we want you to consider that maybe, being healthy or healthy eating, or the idea of health, is more than just the types and amount of food you eat. Try to consider that it's actually going back to those basics. So babies are a great example of this. When they're hungry, they're hungry, right? And they will scream or cry. When they're full, they will spit food out, throw food on the floor, push their head away. They will let you know when, hey, I've had enough to eat. So our kind of definition of healthy eating, so to speak, is really someone who is in tune with all of those things. If they feel good about eating, they take an interest in food, even unfamiliar food. Doesn't mean that you love all food, but you're curious about food. You eat as much as you need to feel satisfied. You're able to feed yourself regularly and reliably. And for the most part, eating is joyful and relaxed. It's not this stress-inducing or anxiety-inducing activity. The thing is, as we get older, that innate ability that we're all born with, it takes some relearning, it takes some practice to tune back into that, because there are so many external factors that tend to get in the way. And in the next slide, you'll see, I don't think we can have this conversation about healthy eating without understanding all the other determinants at play, such as the social determinants of health. So like I said, the tip of the iceberg there is, just tell me what to eat and I'll be healthy, right? So just show me the food guide, I'll follow the food guide and I'll be healthy. But we know that there's so many more things underneath that tip of the iceberg that really affect what and how we eat. So things like privilege, culture, convenience, access, your attitudes, beliefs, and knowledge about food, how confident you are in preparing food, and the list goes on. And a lot of these things are oftentimes out of our control. So alas, Tress and I are sad to say that there is another pandemic going on right now. And you could probably guess what it is, with the title of this webinar, but I'm guessing a lot of you have heard of the term diet culture before. And diet culture is when that individual definition of healthy becomes tainted or becomes affected by those external factors. And it can really affect our mental well-being. And you can imagine if it affects adults' mental well-being, how that might translate to kids as well. So diet culture, what is it? It doesn't take long to scroll through TikTok or Instagram to see all of these examples of diet culture show up. We see cleansing, we see detoxing, we see clean eating, which we'll chat about in just a moment. We see Fitspo, you have to be fit to be healthy. We see influencers and celebrities sending these messages that, just take this pill or this powder and you'll be healthy or you'll look like me. And you often see people who look like you, who are very influential, sending these messages as well. So it just really complicates this landscape of nutrition messages that we have. And these are all examples of diet culture. But, and as Christy Harrison says, diet culture is a system of beliefs. So it's actually a lot sneakier than you might think. So we're going to break down diet culture into four different things. So diet culture worships thinness, and it equates this thin ideal to health and moral virtue. So you might see this play out, examples of this play out in your everyday life. You might see this play out in children's books, in maybe your favorite TV show. Oftentimes we see people in larger bodies portrayed as lazy or unsuccessful. And the superhero of the show is portrayed in a thinner body. So that's an example of diet culture. Diet culture also demonizes certain ways of eating while elevating others. So this is that clean eating mentality that there are good foods and there are bad foods. These foods are clean and these foods are dirty, I guess. But either way, it really dichotomizes foods and it makes people feel really shameful and blameful and guilty when they either can access those good foods or healthy foods and vice versa. And then, of course, comes in the money part. So diet culture promotes weight loss as a means of attaining higher status, and we'll chat about this a little bit later on. But we think that the biggest issue here with diet culture is that it really is a social justice issue. So diet culture oppresses people who don't match up with its supposed picture of health. And in addition to diet culture, it kind of goes hand in hand with weight stigma and weight bias. So it's kind of this vicious circle, if you will. So, diet culture in one sentence simply means that it's a system that values weight, shape, and size over someone's actual health and well-being. And when we say health and well-being, we don't just mean, what someone's eating or how much they're moving their bodies. We're talking about the bigger picture. So are you prioritizing sleep? Do you have access to, food? Do you have social supports? Those kinds of things. That's the bigger picture there. But diet culture kind of cuts all of that out. So weight bias also goes hand in hand with that. And weight bias refers to the beliefs, assumptions, and judgments towards individuals based on their weight, shape, and size. Weight stigma is when someone is stigmatized or discriminated against because of their weight. And it means that others might react or treat them differently, maybe as a lesser valuable member of society. Whew, lots of big things here. And so from one of the books that is in our prize pack, so stay tuned for that. Thank you for attending. We do have a prize pack, FYI. But this is a quote from Body Happy Kids. So any culture that creates an ideal will mean those who are further away from the ideal are not only left out of conversations, they're actively discriminated against too. So we're going to show a short video of how these unrealistic standards affect many aspects of our lives. And please note that there are some mention in the video of overweight and other words that we don't personally use, but we hope that you find this video helpful in terms of demonstrating the point that we're trying to make.
Would you ever lose weight to make more money?
Sorry?
Would you lose weight to make more money?
Yes.
Yes?
My name is Ketty. I'm going to talk to some real women about body size.
Up to how many kilograms would you lose weight?
5?
5?
Yeah, something like that.
How much does weight really matter?
It's statistically proven that women who are overweight earn less annually.
It makes perfect sense. I mean, it doesn't make sense, it's ridiculous, but it doesn't surprise me at all.
Women already make less money than men. So I feel like anything that you have extra, like you'll lose money for it, just because.
When you're overweight, our society we live in gives you the feeling that it's not quite all right. I mean, you can always be better and do more sport and eat healthier and stuff like that.
I feel like I have to be super light skinned. I have to have really long curly hair. I need to have some type of stereotypical video girl body. So I was actually just having a meltdown the other day about that. About just not feeling cute enough.
And when you feel insecure, I think it definitely has an impact how you say, hey you, I want to have more money because I'm worth it.
I mean, we're brought up by society to doubt ourselves.
I think it's often kids who may be overweight who have a hard time because they're considered less of, because people who are overweight are often looked at those that don't make an effort.
When do you feel the most confident?
When I'm naked.
When you're naked? Like, what about being naked makes you feel confident?
Well, that's my real form. Everything else is drag, literally.
Everybody has something in their life where they can say, I'm good at this. I realized where I'm good at, and for example, I'm very good at my job.
But at the end of the day, the body is borrowed. I am who I am for a reason. I look how I look for a reason, and I think to not accept that is to not accept myself.
Great. Yeah, so as you can see from that video, some examples of how diet culture really plays into weight stigma, weight bias, and how that trickles into other areas of our lives, such as, how much we make. And so we realize that this video is largely geared towards those socialized as women in society, but we also, need to acknowledge that folks socialized as men are also affected by body ideals, but certainly to a lesser extent than women. So the little graphic that we have up here is also taken from one of the books that you'll be entered in to win. It's called Unapologetic Eating by Alyssa Rumsey. And this just kind of walks you through how body ideals have changed over time, particularly for women. So For example, in the 1900s, corsets to emphasize small waist and curves, to the 1940s, fuller hourglass figure, to 1980s, fit and toned body shape, to the 1990s, wayfish, thin, pale, young looking, to the 2020s, so current day, thin, but with big breasts and round butt. So, oh my gosh, it's so hard to keep up. It's always changing, but we have some questions for you in regards to that. So, where do you think these ideals come from? And you can please feel free to pop your answers into the chat box here so we could all see them. We want you to think about these questions. So where do you think these body ideals come from? And if you want to pop your answer into the chat there, how can these beauty standards impact the health and well-being of individuals, community, and perhaps society as a whole? And the big question of the day is, who profits or gains from these beauty ideals or these beauty standards? So, we can start with the first question. You know, where do you think these ideals come from? So you have advertisements, love interests, certainly. Pop culture, absolutely. Celebrities, social media, family, yes. Advertisement media, online influencers, definitely. Those can all shape that. Oh, my good friend Sue. Someone once called me a lollipop, round head and stick body. Yeah, I mean, body comments are never okay. I'm sorry. Sorry that happened. Yes, so that's great. Some of the other answers that Tressa and I were kind of brainstorming on for this question were patriarchy, racism, our privileges, so varying privileges can affect what these body ideals look like. Homophobia can also affect what the body du jour looks like as well. But I think you guys nailed it with all of the answers that you provided, so thank you for that.
Nikki had a good comment there too. So these change depending on the culture and society which we live.
Yes. It kind of goes back to that comment, you know, any culture that has an ideal kind of leaves people off the table and leaves other people out. So yeah, absolutely. And so this is why, you know, Tressa and I like to share our own privileges right at the start, because we realize that it affects the conversations that we have. So we think that it's important to make that really clear and transparent. In terms of who profits or gains from these beauty standards, look at this right here. So, you know, the diet industry, I'm sure many of us are aware that it's a big money machine. So it's worth over $72 billion per year, and probably more. So this isn't factoring in all of the wellness things that also kind of tie into diet culture as well. So it could be a lot more than 72 billion per year. And there are some fallacies when it comes to diet culture. So diet culture likes to feed us some myths when it comes to our bodies and food. So some of these myths include that people can lose weight safely and permanently. But in reality, on the flip side of that, restrictive diets or rigid food rules or exercise rules are quite harmful to our overall well-being. So sure, someone might lose weight temporarily, but in the long term, what is that doing to your mental well-being or your relationship to food or your body? Diet culture wants us to believe that diets are a healthy way to achieve weight loss. But again, on the flip side of that, what's really interesting is that our weight, our body shape and size is largely genetically determined. In fact, about 70 to 80% of our weight is genetically determined, which you don't hear of, but certainly diet culture's voice is loud and clear. And then diet culture says that your body is an equation. You know, it's just a matter of eating less and moving more. I'm sure we've all heard that before. So calories in versus calories out. But if you remember back to that iceberg analogy, there are so many things that are often out of our control that affect what and how we eat, what we look like, what we have access to, that affect our bodies. And back to you, Tressa.
All right. Thank you, Amanda. So we have touched on the subjectivity and I guess individuality of healthy eating, right? And all the factors that go into what it means to each one of us. Also, we talked about how diet culture can negatively impact our relationship with food, eating, as well as our bodies. So with all this, it wouldn't be fair if we just ended the webinar now, right? And we were like, oh, that's diet culture for you. So we thought it'd be helpful to provide some tips on how can we spot diet culture? Because I don't know about you, but if you haven't already, like I'm ready to drop out of this culture and discover ways to protect not only my mental health, but also others around me as well. So how does diet culture show up? It's sneaky. So I'm about to share a nice size list with you as to where we can see diet culture and how it shows up in our society. There is lots of information because it's everywhere, right? It's pervasive within our food environment. So we can see it in labeling of foods or evaluating foods as good or bad. And with it, attaching a moral value to oneself for eating XYZ foods. It also promotes restriction and rigid food rules. Usually these are kind of disguised as being healthy or on a health kick, right? You hear this all the time, which we've seen in slides before, can be in fact detrimental to our health. Diet culture can also impact our mental, emotional, and social well-being as well, especially if we are maybe feeling guilty after eating or feeling anxious about eating. Maybe this is something where you see it as avoiding social situations because of the type of food that is served or the lack of control of knowing what is available or what food will be served, right? Diet culture also promotes kind of this entire culture that normalizes obsessing over all of these things, right? So what's really important, though, is to say that it's not your fault to feel any of these things or that maybe you've partook in any of these things, right? This is a result of diet culture and you are not to blame for that because, as we mentioned, it's everywhere. The wellness diet, or being a healthy person, has taken over old school dieting or that yo-yo dieting that we would have seen years before that is still present within our society today, where we see a lot of the same diets being recycled over and over again, right? And then they're presented as some new way to be a better, more healthier you, right? So Christy Harrison here lists a few different things, but in this video that I'm about to show as well, Dr. Joshua Woolrich exposes diet culture in some of its sneaky ways as well. So I'm going to go ahead and play this.
Diet culture has a habit of normalizing eating disorder behaviors. It's sneaky. It allows us to justify our disordered eating by wrapping it up in a supposed blanket of wellness. Don't let it trick you.
So what all of these have in common are that they are trying to change our bodies in some way, right? Or promoting this change. Our society focuses so much on weight. We hear things like an obesity epidemic all the time, chronic disease prevention. These are the things that are being focused on. But what we don't hear about is disordered eating and how these weight-centric approaches to health affect our relationship with food and our bodies.
Diet culture.
So, have we stopped to think about the effects of focusing solely on weight, obesity, and chronic disease prevention? I have a poll question here that I'm going to pop up that asks, what do you think? How much more likely is a child to have an eating disorder than type 2 diabetes? So I'm going to share this question here. Okay, there you go. So is it 2 times more likely, 100 times more likely, 200 times more likely, or not more likely at all? Got some answers coming in here, so I'll give you another few seconds just to answer this poll question. How much more likely is a child to have an eating disorder than type 2 diabetes? Okay. So we can see here that majority believe it to be 100 times more likely. Next up, we have 200 times more likely, and then a few others for 2 times or not more likely. Okay. So, did you know that a child, so any of you that wrote 200 times, a child is 242 times more likely to have an eating disorder than they are to have type 2 diabetes. Yet what we see in not only public health education, but also research is money being spent and messages being shared, warning parents and kids about childhood obesity. Because, well, as we were talking about earlier, this is very much rooted in weight stigma or fat phobia, not necessarily health. Another statistic as well is that by 9 years old, 50% of girls have dieted or restricted their food take in some way. We also see 42% of children through kindergarten and grade 3 wanting to be thinner. 81% of 10-year-olds are afraid of being fat. And this one here really shocked me as well, and is a little bit timely with things, but from the Body Respect book, that majority of kids are more afraid of being fat than they are of cancer, war, or their parents dying. Let that one sink in a little bit. And we also see that there is oftentimes eating disorders among BIPOC folks and people in larger bodies often go undiagnosed because of all these different reasons. So fat phobia, weight stigma, weight bias, racism, and the list goes on, right? These statistics are not new either. Research in this field is getting traction. Of course, further research is always needed, but so is advocacy and awareness and kind of a push for the importance of research that surrounds disordered eating and the effects that it has on children and youth. In recent years, AKA since the start of the pandemic, and maybe this is why some of you have joined today because it's been getting some news traction, are the alarming rates of eating disorder diagnoses and emergency department visits throughout the pandemic. We've seen between 2019 and 2020, rates have doubled. This was in the US. In Winnipeg, a psychiatrist and staff chief at the Child and Adolescent Eating Disorders Service at the Health Sciences Center here said that they have seen referral rates for teens seeking treatment triple since 2019. Some potential rationale for the increase. Again, these are a portion of the statistics as well and does not fully reflect the full situation, right? Including those that were perhaps previously diagnosed with an eating disorder or were struggling in some capacity, right? And this could have been exacerbated by the high levels of stress, uncertainty, lack of daily routine. These were some of the rationale that were provided by the report referenced at the bottom there. This past September in Manitoba, we're seeing the wait list for eating disorder treatment being up to 2 years long. So this was reported back in September. These statistics are alarming, right? And so where does diet culture fit into all of this? So this is a little reflection pit stop, let's call it. It's good to spot, it's a good spot to reflect, right, on the following. And these are just for self-reflection only. Again, we'll be taking questions up at the end. So just taking a moment to reflect on the quiz we took earlier. What is your inner dialogue with food like? Is it positive, negative, both, neutral, a mixed bag of all the above? How does this affect your mental health on the day-to-day? And where in your life have you seen diet culture show up now that we've started to kind of spot these pieces? While you're reflecting on this, we're all on our own individual food journey, right? And it's along this journey that we have opportunities and experiences to learn new ways to protect our relationship with food and our bodies. And with that, also unlearn the ways that are maybe no longer serving us, or maybe they never did serve us and we're just becoming aware of it now. So if a lot of this information is new to you and you're kind of like, oh my goodness, that's okay, right? We want to meet you where you're at. And while this topic might not be an easy thing to talk about, nor is changing lifelong conditioning or anything like that an easy feat, but it is possible. And just remembering too that you are not alone, because diet culture is everywhere, as we keep saying. So there's a better way forward, right? And it starts with the language we use. So we're going to move into how we can change the way we talk about food, bodies, and movement, specifically with children and youth. Because as adults, we can be role models and kind of set the stage to support kids towards a more positive relationship with their with food, bodies, and movement. So protecting your mental health. Number one, learning to identify these messages is the first step. So where do we see these messages? Knowing that it's not your fault that diet culture affects you. Again, it's everywhere, right? We're bombarded with these messages. Reflecting, how do these food rules make you feel, right? When we are looking at these different food rules, they can make us feel secure, but what are you trading for this security blanket? Following the money, so again, who's profiting? And then lastly here, remembering that your worth and health is not tied to your body shape or size. You are more than what you eat. These beliefs and practices take a lot of energy as well. And does talking about bodies in this way help with the relationship with ourselves, right? Talking about shredding, cutting, blasting, burning this. To get there, we need to unlearn some things. So it's time to change the way we talk about food and our bodies, because this isn't sustainable. And as Amanda mentioned earlier, the beauty standards are always changing, right? And with it, we are continuously playing catch up, trying to change our bodies to some unsustainable standard. A safer way is to approach health from a weight neutral or inclusive lens. So considering weight inclusivity, we encourage you to question and look at the environment that children and youth are in, right? Are we accepting and respecting the diversity of body shapes and sizes, right? In all of these different things, posters, textbooks, lessons. We're more than the food we eat, and we are more than just a body, right? We offer the world, our communities and families, children and youth we work with so much more than just a gene size or a number on a scale. So when we're talking about bodies, we want to change the dialogue, right? Considering that all bodies are good bodies. And leading by example is how we can do that, right? Being a role model. Similar to changing the conversation surrounding bodies, we can also do this with food and eating. So in the chat box, we would love to hear your thoughts on why do we eat? Why do you eat? We'll give everyone a couple seconds here to write in the chat box. Amanda, because I'm hungry. To celebrate, Courtney says, yes, celebration, love it. Social activity, food tastes good, nourishment and strength, to get nourishment, energy, fueling the body, social, cultural, nutritional, emotional, love it, Sue, joy, celebration, togetherness. I love how quick you had those at your fingertips. That makes me smile. Entertainment, to get energy. Yeah, so many things. Joy, sensation, connection, tradition, absolutely, right? Culture, different traditions that we have within our families, communities. That's great. Thank you for sharing. So oftentimes the basics on why and how we eat get clouded by other factors, right? So you just shared some beautiful factors as to why we eat, right? And the things that we want to kind of remember, right? Or relearn, right? If we are looking at, I guess, dropping out of diet culture and all the reasons that are promoted throughout diet culture. So we really love these graphics by Food and Fearless that kind of just portray food and the messages surrounding it in a very inclusive and kind, compassionate way. So changing the dialogue with food and eating. Let's talk about food in a different way, right? We can use our senses as guidance. It's important also to stop labeling foods as good or bad. A cookie is a cookie, right? It's not junk or a treat or evaluated based on someone's individual idea of how often something should be ate, right? And naming foods as they are is a very important piece to this too. So calling a cookie by a cookie. When we stop evaluating and judging foods, we have the opportunity to open up a whole new world of food, right? Cue some Disney music. And with this, we know and acknowledge that not all foods are nutritionally equal, right? There's many different nutrients, vitamins, minerals that go into different foods. But what we can do is keep foods on an even playing field, right? So they can be morally equal, okay? So how can educators support children and youth in building a positive relationship with food, bodies, and movement? This is where we're going to do a little Newton plug for you, because Newton can help with the programs and resources that we have available for educators that work with children and youth. So up on the screen here, so with these 4 ingredients, Newton works to inspire Manitoba educators to have a positive impact on kids' food journeys using that hands-on approach to discover and explore a variety of foods. So I'm going to take us through each one of these ingredients that help make a difference in the lives of children and youth that we work with. So first is eating competence. You can see at the bottom of the graphic here that there is a little farm and a little trolley. And when I play the graphic, you'll see how there's a variety of foods, right? From cheese to carrots to cake, all of which symbolize developing a positive relationship with food through neutral food exposure, as well as learning where foods come from. We do this by supporting kids and families in their lifelong journey towards navigating our world of food. Second is food literacy. So this is all about developing the skills and competence to choose and enjoy foods for not only nourishment, but also that pleasure and celebration piece. The third ingredient is body acceptance. So it was important to us that we didn't use humans in this part of the animation to be sensitive to all body shapes and sizes, which is difficult to represent in a short animation. So instead, we have our little foodie friends here, the little carrot, to help demonstrate that healthy bodies come in different shapes and sizes. And then lastly is food journeys. So we want to represent the idea that all of the elements of eating competence are a lifelong journey. And with this, we can celebrate the unique food journeys of families, communities, and the children that we work with. With this, we respect the complex, diverse, and personal food and body experiences as well. And for Newton, as a team, this means learning more about the social determinants of health, the kind of this ongoing learning journey, meeting families and educators, aka teachers and early childhood educators, as well as children on our field trips when we're able to have them, where they are at, and how understanding these complexities can shape our programs. So the main way we do this is by providing training and nutrition programs to Manitoba educators. We have programs geared for educators working with early years through grade 8, as well as workshops are available for all early years as well as school age, so senior years as well, for educators specifically. Beyond our programs that are primarily for teachers and ECEs, we also have webinars like this one, a blog that's newly launched, good job Amanda, and free resources on our website available for everybody to download as you please. Right, so I'm going to pass it on to Amanda here for kind of tying up our loose ends.
Amazing, thanks Tressa. I will whip through these next few slides just to wrap things up. I know we We talked a lot. There's lots to unpack here. So what's the bottom line? You know, what can you take away from this? And we have a few slides to share that. So we just want to acknowledge the amazing work of Shauna Spence. She's on Instagram at The Nutrition Tea. Amazing advocate for anti-diet culture. So some really great reminders here. There's no such thing as perfect eating, clean eating, or good or bad foods. Diet culture really is a system that profits off of unrealistic and often unhealthy ideals. And the latest fad diet is not a group project. You don't have to participate because everyone else is. So go give her a follow. She's amazing. And we want to thank all of you who came today to be with us for this hour. And we hope that, if anything, a small seed of awareness has been planted about what diet culture is and what you can do to change the narrative going forward. So thank you for being here. And before you exit out, or when you exit out, you should be taken to a 1-question survey. So if you could take 30 seconds to answer that. The question is, what is one thing you'll put into practice as a result of coming today? We love this quote here. You know, diet culture makes you feel like a stranger in your own home. We think that's quite fitting. So let's change that narrative. Don't forget to download your handouts in the chat box. And in case you missed it, we do have a blog where we will be posting this webinar once it's uploaded. So we'll let you know by email when that is ready to go for all of those who may have missed it today. We also have a previous blog called Nurturing Healthy Eaters as well, webinar called Nurturing Healthy Eaters. So check that out if you missed that one. And finally, the most exciting part, of course, is that for all of those who attended today, we will be drawing for an anti-diet prize pack, which includes these 4 amazing books. They are just awesome. So we will be announcing the winner soon by email. And if you want to give us a follow as well, all of our socials are at NewtonMB, and you can email us anytime if you have questions, comments, concerns. We are open. Our lines are open. So from Tressa and I, we want to thank all of you for coming out today, and we will open up the floor. We realize we're like really close to time here, but we are opening up the floor to any questions that you might have. And once again, thank you.
Welcome, Cheryl. Thank you. Tina, can you tell us the names of the books in the prize pack again? Yes, so they are The Anti-Diet by Christy Harrison, Body Happy Kids by Sarah Turner, Unapologetic Eating by Alyssa Rumsey, and Amanda's reading that, and The Intuitive Eating Workbook for Teens as well. And that was by Elise Resch. There you go. Bye, Nikki. Thank you everyone so much for coming today.
Amazing.
Hi, Justine. So nice to see some familiar names.
Oh, and we have to give a shout out to Rochelle Saburin, who has been helping us with our blog. So thank you, Rochelle, for being here too. I don't see any questions. Do you see any questions, Tressa?
I do not, but I will stop the recording here.